shortest here.
I was waiting for you guys to give me the go. Yeah, we're good.
Okay, go ahead, Dan. We're all set.
Okay, so good evening, everybody. This is a study session tonight. There are no public comments tonight, and the next scheduled business meeting is on March 8th. So with that, let's please stand, and I apologize I cannot pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty
and
and
justice
justice
for all.
for all. Thank you. So with that, my announcement is that obviously I am not Augusta. Augusta is sitting at the head tonight. Thank you, Augusta. I had surgery early today, so I will not be in attendance tonight, but I'm here with you virtually. Can I get a motion to call the order? Bob is first, Naomi is second, all in favor? Motion passes. Okay, so as I had mentioned, there are no public comments at study session meetings. Study session meetings are designed for the purpose of having administrative updates to the Board of Education. Residents may attend the next scheduled business meeting on March 8th, 2022. And/or contact the board via email at boe@shenschools.org with any comments or questions. All questions come into the Office of Public Information Officer and are shared with the board and/or superintendent as appropriate. Policy questions, concerns are typically addressed by the board president. Operational questions, concerns are typically addressed by the superintendent and/or designee. Like I said, if there's anybody in attendance tonight, we are masking, red on the doors coming into the building. So please mask up. I can't see you all back there, but all right. Dr. Robinson, you want to give your report?
Thank you very much, Mrs. Stevens. So just a couple of comments, broadly in general. As certainly the board knows, because we've been having conversation all week related to as we're thinking about where the state is going with COVID and COVID protocols. We'll see what the next week or so brings, and then we'll have future conversation at the board table related to those protocols and whatever modifications are warranted at that point. I say that because just so people know from a public perspective that these things are being taken under consideration as well. However, the main thing tonight, just want to emphasize and pretty excited about this time of the year where we have a chance to talk about all the great things that's happening within the school district. So the mid-year goals report is designed to do that. We're also, prior to that, Dr. Wood will have an update on kind of where we are with block scheduling, since we spoke about this about a year ago and we have gone through the process now, so keep the board in terms of update in terms of where we are and where we think we're going with the block scheduling process moving forward. So with that being said, I'm going to jump right into the presentations because we do have a long list of presentations. So I just want to make sure, just from a technical pieces, Lindsay, the presentation you're using are is the one that's attached to the agenda, correct?
Correct.
So that make sure that what's being shared with the viewing audience is the same thing that you're seeing here in the library. So let me just access that for the purposes of board members who are present. And I'm just going to do one other small technical piece as well. It's not so, well, I thought I was going to try to, excuse me. So I'm trying to help my colleagues who, as they present, so this is like the low-tech version of having your own private simulcast. So excuse me as I trip over my wires here.
Watch out for the microphone.
Oh my goodness.
No, Bob would help me. Bob is there. So for my colleagues who are presenting, and so Mr. Stevenson is still here. Dr. Would you read the first guinea pig?
Sounds good.
So, here you go. Can you move that?
So pleased to be here along with several other folks this evening who will be making their way forward. For us to provide an overview of where we're at with block scheduling, and you're going to hear that this is kind of a common theme through the entire mid-year goals presentation because it's been such a focus of the work at the secondary level. However, we've kind of committed to going into a little more detail on this presentation and going at a more surface level in the mid-year goals update rather than having you hear it twice. So the first several slides specific to block scheduling, the block scheduling update.
Is that not working?
Yeah. Get there. Might be the PDF of it. Yeah, that's scroll, unfortunately.
Oh, you often have it. Okay, yeah.
Not really. All right, so the first one gives it an overview. And the first several slides specific to block scheduling really bring us back to where we started. And I should have looked at what the year was. Like in 2018, 2019, we were soliciting feedback. We had surveys. So we were really starting this in the 16, 17 timeframe. And to reframe us, it was really specific to our commitment to excellence, where we were saying we really need to continually look at how we are providing education to our students. Not so much to think about, all right, here and now, but to really think about how we're preparing them for the future. And a lot less about what we've been doing, and a lot more about what are their future needs? What are the types of learning and the approach to learning that leads to the highest level outcomes? And we realized, like, the cell phone, I left it in my chair, but it has completely changed really what school should be about. We all carry around really sophisticated computers. What we learned in school, most of us can just pull out with a couple of keystrokes and a simple lookup and find that information. And our approach in school really needs to be about diving deep in understanding, critical thinking skills, context, understanding multiple sides and perspectives, and thinking about what is it that students need to have a highly productive life, college, and career. And so we were looking at how to maximize the time during the day. Also, how do we reduce the frenetic pace? I don't know about all of you, but our previous schedule was a 9-period day. When I get to the end of my day and I've had 9 meetings, I'm often stopping and thinking, what did I do? Where was I? What did I learn? Are there follow-up things I need to do from any of those meetings? And that's what our students and teachers were experiencing every day. Day over day over day. And so we were really thinking, what is the best schedule, and is that the best way to move forward? So you'll see that sorry, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know what, I think I can pull down here. Here we go. All right, so we solicited feedback in 2018, 2019 after we started doing some legwork behind the scenes, thinking about what could be. And the other thing I want to mention, what really got us off the dime in terms of looking at it, is the number of teachers we were hiring in from other districts saying, boy, I love everything about being at Shen, but what is up with this schedule? And multiple folks that we were hiring in, particularly at the secondary level, had come from a place where they were learning with extended blocks and teaching in extended blocks and were really missing it, as were a number of our teachers whose children were attending school districts with an extended block. So we started having, we sent out a survey, is there interest in changing the day? Looking at it differently, yes, there was interest. We held several community forums. The feedback in general, after having conversation, was that there was strong interest in doing this. So that in January 2019, we established a committee with 32 members representing the middle school and the high school, and really multiple departments were represented. And so we settled on what were the key elements we were looking for in an alternative schedule. So we wanted to make sure we were providing opportunity to address the characteristics in the profile of an engaged classroom. We were really emphasizing deep and authentic learning, maximizing this time in the classroom, and minimizing the number of transitions. Minimizing transitions also helps enhance student safety, supporting student wellness and mental health, right? A less frenetic day, more time to build relationships and feel comfortable in each setting. Manageable preparation for the next day. Students have, at least in the 80-minute block, they're preparing for half as many classes for the next day. Access, one of our goals was to make sure, particularly at the high school level, that students were able to access the same number of classes. The caveat there was that students who in a 9-period day did not have lunch, which all along we've said we really strongly discourage, that was not going to be an option in a different schedule. But other than that, if you took 8 classes, you would still be able to take 8 classes at the high school level, and that the access to the course material, we were really trying to make sure that the schedule was no worse off than what we had previously experienced with the 9-period day. So we worked with a consultant, Elliot Marenbloom. He came in and did multiple days with us, formulating and looking at a number of different scheduling models. And after meeting 12 times over 12 months, the committee was surveyed, and you'll see that we had a very favorable response from that large representative committee, that they were interested in moving forward with looking at this alternative, or the alternate schedule, which was really the 80-minute block. And here you see the reasons for supporting that, many of which we've already talked about. I did not mention the fostering, that it fosters better relationships with students and teachers, a calmer atmosphere. And so this is what the 9-period day schedule looked like. Just the standard, I think many of you are familiar with that. And then this is what we had moved to. Really starting, the intention, you'll see in a couple of slides, is that we moved to it this year. We ended up moving to it last year, which I'll explain in just a minute. So here is another example of a 9-period day, and then how it looks like, and the yellow highlights just show how the biology and lab and PE all fit in the block schedule. And here's an example of a typical teacher schedule over 9 periods. Sorry, I'm probably going too fast here, and this is a problem. You have to go through it with a PDF, but you also have it in your board packet. And then here's what the teacher looks like from the 9-period consecutive day to their planning blocks. And interestingly, and it was actually great to go back into where were we and where are we now. This is the communication timeline that we came up with. And it must have been January, February 2020. I didn't go back and look at the exact date. But the intention was that we were analyzing space and that we were doing the presentation to IPAC, all of which really surprisingly happened right in the middle of COVID. So in fact, we had the first, I think, presentation to IPAC right before we went out, and then we had the follow-up once we were working remotely. And then we met with STA leadership. We were talking about what kind of professional development would teachers like to be feeling like they're prepared, which Vanessa Kramer will talk about in just a minute. And before you know it, we were right in the throes of COVID, and we were trying to plan for a return to school in September 2020. And while we had intended to implement the block schedule in September 2021, the benefit of the block schedule, which you saw we had a lot of support for, was that it minimized the number of contacts that every student and every teacher had each day. So reducing exposure, reducing contact tracing. So we ended up actually moving to the block schedule a year sooner than we had thought we would originally. But it is kind of amazing to look at this and see, wow, we were actually able to continue to move forward with a significant adjustment that we saw was very positive for our students in spite of this. So then our attention really turned to how are we supporting teachers? How are we supporting teachers with this shift in terms of how they're preparing lessons? And for that, Vanessa Kramer, our instructional coach, will talk about how we focus on professional learning.
Good evening, everybody. So once the schedule was actually built and implemented last year, the professional development team really kind of dived into a PD plan, and it started March of last year at our superintendent's conference day, kind of laying the groundwork. We actually developed summer programs for our teachers to attend, and we actually made it mandatory for them to have certain things by the time they came back to school in September. In this school year, we've been offering classes, additional professional development, and we're hoping to culminate it, I think block scheduling professional development is something that should be ongoing, but culmination of our 3-part series, which is on the next slide. The PD team laid out a 3-session plan. The first session was actually taking the great work that Elliot Barenblum came to our district as a district, taking all the great components of what makes the great block scheduling and presenting to our staff. On your tables in front of you, I just brought some examples. This big pamphlet was session 1, and we wanted the teachers to start thinking about how are students learning, what are the best instructional strategies that kind of give us the biggest gains in learning, and what kind of things should we be thinking about in the block, and some old really good things, Bloom's taxonomy, Gardner's multiple intelligences, and on the back we kind of gave them a preview of how we wanted to plan. So that was session 1. Session 2 is actually giving them a condensed version of that pamphlet and saying, let's create, let's build a block, let's evaluate each other, let's offer suggestions for improvement. And session 3 will be run this March, where the teachers will actually be given the day to write plans using these materials, and it will end in a department meeting where they share resources on good block plans, and we'll have a library for every academic department 6 through 12.
You know, Ron Agostinoni, high school principal, who will provide an overview of the high school.
So a lot of positive, I would say all positives, and Dr. Wood kind of touched on most of them. But the number of preps for students is huge for us. So students are preparing for 3 or 4 classes the next day. They're engaging in 3 or 4 classes. Our kids are busy, right? If you have a kid in robotics, they're there all the time. The musicals they're preparing. Our students are very busy. Our athletes are busy. Students work. So that was huge for our students, and it's nice to see it come to fruition. And we hear from students they feel less stressed. The workload is manageable. So that's something we've heard over and over from students that we really, it's nice to see it. We knew it was going to happen, but we're nice to see it really come to fruition with our kids. The learning is more active because teachers are able to engage with their students. They're able to really get into that deep, complex learning that Dr. Wood talked about. And something that I wasn't thinking about, maybe because I wasn't in the orchestra or band, but our students that are in performance groups have said they've been able to improve much greater than they have in the past because the teacher is able to get into, well, this group needs to do this, we need to take some time to work on this. Our music teachers, I can't plug them enough, how wonderful they are. They've incorporated lessons into the longer blocks. They've really kind of taken hold of this schedule. The pace is really different. It's a more enjoyable atmosphere for students, right? Of course, there's stress and sometimes it's difficult and we have work to do and all that kind of stuff, but students like the pace. They're not changing. There was one student who said, I felt like by the time I got into class, it ended and I had to go to the next one. Imagine transitioning 9 or 10 times a day, 50 times a week. That's a lot of traveling around the building, a lot of wasted time. So it's really nice to have that back. And some of that captured time, we have in student prep now. So our students come in the morning and it's the only time in however many years we have all of our teachers, students, counselors are available. So if you need to meet with your counselor, you need to meet with your teacher, you can take advantage of that time. I'll tell you right now, it's being used heavily by our math teachers. They love that time. Our kids are meeting with our math teachers quite a bit, and that time gets used like anywhere, especially closer towards the end of the quarters. And with our grading policies, this ties in nice because kids are doing redos and retakes, and their teachers are available in the morning to do those kind of things. So it's really, that time has really worked for us. And the critical thing I mentioned, but the relationships, the peer-to-peer interactions, we're a large high school. A lot of times you're in class with students you do not know. Teachers are able to foster that. And I would say we focused on SEL, but the time in social emotional learning, the time in class has really enabled that. And as we look at lessons learned, I would say these lessons learned would exist no matter what the schedule is. If we said we're doing 30 periods a day or 1 block a day, we would still have the same lesson learned in terms of the schedule is never done. If today we showed you the nuts and bolts of our schedule, and it was the same 5 years ago, we're doing something wrong. Now, I believe it'll be a 4x4 block in structure, but we should make slight changes every year, and that's what we're doing. So we're making adjustments, and we found small adjustments really make a big impact. And as you see on the screen there, there's a lot of solutions with a block. So if you think about it, we have 4 blocks. Block 3 is longer because of lunch, so we really have 9 modules in there, or 9 periods within there, so we can kind of flex and do some things that are creative, especially with block 3 and our performance groups, jazz band, ensemble. So we're able to do some stuff in there. We're looking to kind of improve some of that, working with our music teachers. And the big thing, I would say, no matter what the schedule is, teaching matters, whether they're there for 40 minutes or 80 minutes. So professional development, credit to Vanessa, she was up here showing some of the wonderful things. That's something we have to keep doing regardless of schedule.
Thank you. And representing the middle school, we have Robin Gories, Principal of Gowanna, followed by Sean Knapp, Principal of Coda.
Good evening. You're going to hear a repetitive theme, so I'm going to not share a few of the things that Ron did here, and you'll probably see that with our next presentation. But you know, thinking about the first two bullets here, they really, really go hand in hand. And when I think about an 80-minute lesson, and take a science lab as an example, you know, that ability to start off with an introduction and to go into some type of either individual work or group work, and not have that, you know, we used to hear of the kind of that rat race where you would get into class and you didn't really have an opportunity to take from start to finish. We're able to see that now. We're able to see that full closure and that entire project be able to go from start to finish. And it really is a powerful thing that I had never seen because I had never worked in an 80-minute. And you know, students, staff are truly enjoying it. Going back up to one of the pieces of the top bullets is, and one thing that Ron did say, is the teachers and the students, they really are building those relationships and that sense of community. We've seen more, and I think because there is that sense of relaxed, you know, we're seeing stuff like mindfulness and wellness that's taking place in the classroom, and we are, as leaders, saying that that's okay to do that because you are building that sense of community, and it's really powerful. And then the last one, the bottom one there, the flex time, which is something new for us. So opposite every student's lunch, they have a flex. And the work that we were able to do is 6th and 7th graders were spot on. We had them paired up so that they were always with their team teachers so they had access. 8th grade gets a little tricky just because of our lunches, so not necessarily all 8th grade, but that's something we're going to be looking at for next year. But point being is that the flex is a phenomenal opportunity for our teachers and our students to meet with one another. And we've even heard students say, it's a great time for me to help my classmate catch up on a lab. That's student to student. That's not necessarily teacher to teacher or teacher to student, but it's extra help. It's all those wonderful things that you would want for the teacher or the student to be able to do. It's if they missed work and so on. Administratively, selfishly, but I think it's also a great benefit for our teachers and our students is we are able to schedule things for the students during that flex time. So we could pull them from a flex time as opposed to say, okay, math teachers, we're going to pull you from your 80-minute math so that we can get some of those things and we can have them do, like the 6th graders just recently did their load selections, which is a big deal for the kids. They need to figure out which of the 4 languages, right, Mrs. Choppy? And that's a big deal. So we did that during the flex time. So a lot of wonderful things have come from that, and I'll turn it over to Sean.
Robin, can I ask you a quick question though before?
Ask.
Just curious. So when you look at the attention span of a middle schooler, when you look at a 6th grader versus an 8th grader, do you see any difference in the transition? And then I'd be curious, do our 9th graders, the kids transitioning, is this making it better for them in the 9th grade experience?
Yeah, it is.
That'll be a good transition to Mr. Knapp.
I set you up.
Perfect segue.
That's a
Yeah.
loaded question there. I have to go back and you have to.
And while he's coming forward, I will just state, which I've stated many times in this whole thing, our first graders have a 90-minute literacy block. So just to keep in perspective, you know, it is different by level, but the expectation for being engaged in learning starts for a full day right down in first grade right now.
Yeah, and that's the perfect segue into the slide that I'm talking about is one of the words I think that Dr. Wood or Ron just used was the best schedule. There's no such thing as a perfect schedule, and one of the things we look at, and there's not a lot of data out there, a lot of research on it, is, you know, what is the most appropriate developmentally for that, because there's a lot of change going on in the 6 through 8 as opposed to the high school. And one of the terms we use all the time with our schedulers and our schedule committees is continuous improvement. And so that's one of the things we're looking at, and we're spending a lot of time. Even though we've implemented this and that little graphic with all the little jumps has stopped, it hasn't really. because we're continuously going back and looking at what is best. And, you know, the teachers now have a different expertise going through this whole process than they may have had the previous 30 years, because we have the same schedule. They've looked at dozens and dozens. I've looked at probably 50 or 60 different schedules and how we can implement that. So we're continuing to do that, and keeping the focus centered on those engagements and the professional development, because like, I think one of the last things Ron said, whether it's a 40, a 60, an 80, it's the teaching matters, and those multiple engagements throughout have allowed the teachers to do wonderful things. And we're even looking at a 60-minute schedule currently, because not only you are asking that question, but some of our staff, ourselves indeed, saying, you know, is that 80 minutes appropriate for those 6th graders, 7th and 8th graders? And, you know, can we afford the exact same instructional minutes as an 80 and still make it work? Because when we first started off, we didn't think we could, but maybe we can. So not saying we're going that way, but continuous improvement. We always have to make things look better. There's things with our flexes that were, you know, difficult this year that didn't work out. And then you have this, you know, how much can we attribute to this as opposed to the change in schedule? So, and also the professional development that the teachers have done have allowed them to be creative in catching kids up for absences. And while the lower hectic pace, the calmness is wonderful, when a kid misses, they only miss half the classes when a student misses, but they miss twice as much instructional time. So now, okay, we have all these multiple engagements. Oh, that was a little video that I had them do that was sort of student-centered. I could just, you know, go to Google Classroom. It's easier for teachers, I think, to make up those absences as well. And we're looking at data from the flex periods and the number of students that are meeting with their teachers and getting help, and the availability both of teachers being able to access their kids and kids being able to access their teachers. And that is very promising. So there's a lot there, but yes, we are asking ourselves those questions. I don't know that we have all the answers, but again, it's continuous improvement. And you know, I've been doing this for most of my career and taking the lead on it, and it's great and it's wonderful. But we still have some work to do, and we're always going to make those tweaks. It's like anything else you do. First year teacher, hopefully you make that great plan, and the next year you tweak it a little bit and it gets a little bit better. And that's what we're going to do with the schedule as well. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Which is the perfect setup to our last slide of our next steps, which is really continued refinement of both schedules. You heard Ron talk about some of the adjustments, and literally every year, our folks who design the schedules think, oh, what changes do we need to make this year? As an example, oh, used to be period 1, but now you call it block 1, didn't fill for as many senior electives because more students, you know, tried to switch their schedule to have late arrival, right? Like just one example of, you might try to put more of the senior electives towards the middle part of the day to the extent you have the rooms to do so. That would be an example of a type of change that you would be making on an ongoing basis, you know, as you're building a high school schedule year over year. The high school is continuing to look now at the block schedule, saying what are the minor adjustments that we need to be making so that we get the best bang for the buck from the schedule. As Sean indicated, the middle school is currently examining. Are we going to make some adjustments to the 80-minute? Are we looking at the 60-minute? And when we look at the 60-minute, what would that translate to? And having really good conversations with the leadership team and representative teachers in the district as well. So refinement of both schedules, continued professional learning, and as Vanessa Kramer had mentioned, extended time on superintendent's conference day to really roll up their sleeves and work on application of the professional learning as they design longer block lesson plans.
So thank you very much, Elizabeth. I'm actually going to change out of this format and just bear with me for 1 second and go to actually a PowerPoint version of it, because it's easier to click, and one, we have so many people coming up, want to make sure that the transition is smooth for the purpose of the board. So just bear with me 1 second. I'm trying to see how I organize my life. Oops. Mrs. Stevenson, are you still there?
I am.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that you're still there. So I'm going to go back into presentation mode. And you should, in a second, see the presentation. Can you see that presentation now?
I do see it.
Okay, great. So now for presenters, it's just a click piece, a little easier for you to come forward. So right now, it's, what time do you have, Mrs. Miller?
7:34.
7:34, so it's 55 slides, so if we use exactly 43 seconds per slide, we'll be done at 8:30. So that's not putting pressure on anyone, just simply saying, 43 seconds per slide, we'll be done at 8:30. So we're pleased that we do have a wide variety of different individuals here. One of the things I try to do with opportunities like this, particularly for some of our new administrators, to have an opportunity to present in front of the board. It's an opportunity for the board to see them and for them to also show their leadership. So we do have several new administrators or newer administrators. You've heard from Ron already. You're going to hear from Jackie Mikowski. Jackie's one of our newest admin at the high school. You hear from her in a second. Kathleen Strangers is one of our newer principals, not new to the district, but new at Tasago. Todd Giagni. Todd is new to the district, relatively new for elementary principals. And then we have our two newest administrators at the middle school, Tom Hopkins at Gowanus and Bill Luke at Bill Luke at Acadia will do that. And we have Sarah Schneller. You've heard said Sarah before, but you'll see Sarah again. So I share that so you wonder why these people. It's a great opportunity for folks to be in front of the board and express their leadership. And I'm already giving time back by going a little fast on some of these things. So definitely about 8:15. So just for the purpose of the board, we have seen this document over and over, our goal statement, our essential objectives. This essentially drives what we do as a school organization, period. Everything comes back to these things. How do things connect back to one of these our classroom goals? So you're going to see people responding to the different essential objective areas. There's a lot of information on the slide. The intent is not to read every bullet on every slide, but to give the board a good flavor of some of the things that's happening within the school district pertaining to those objectives. Organizational culture goal, personal or professional goal, fiscal responsibility goal. So with that being said, our first person up, and I would ask that the next person who's going to be up be ready, so we can just have a smooth transition without necessarily calling the names. You know who you are. Kathleen Strangers will start the elementary piece, and then we'll keep the flow going. And at 8:10, we'll be done. So you saw time just flies quickly, huh? So at 8:10, we'll be all done, and the board will have 5 minutes to ask questions. So at 8:15, we'll be all concluded. So thank you very much, Mrs. Strangers.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Robinson. I don't even know if there's time for my glasses to fog, but so I won't open each link. Certainly you have access. Thank you very much for the opportunity this evening. I am very humbled to be the first one up in the lineup, but certainly I represent the elementary level to start off with. And we're so excited because the work here is just bountiful. And although there's just a few bullets there, that first one talks about the Shen learning framework. And I don't know if you've seen that document. So it's really a tether strap for us, if you will. It's that grounding document that you'll see over and over again. Up further, sorry, the little voice. It's that grounding document that you'll see over and over again in terms of curriculum, instruction, and assessment. This first slide speaks to the curriculum piece, if you will. So at the elementary level, we explored 2 different content areas in depth this year. The Envision Math program is new to us at the elementary level. A great deal of time went into sort of thinking about what implementation would look like at every grade level, what's developmentally appropriate, what are the many facets of the program. And so this program offers a lot of what Michelle Gabri-Huber calls, our academic administrator, she called it productive struggle, and a lot of math discourse in classrooms. So it's very interesting to see. It's sort of a shift in practice, if you will. And in terms of the literacy plan, we've been discussing literacy at the elementary level for, I would say, a few years now. Some more research has come to light, and so we've been balancing sort of what does that look like at every grade level and what are the most critical components in that way. So here you see this is just a year 1 plan, but we have plans in place for year 2, 3, and such. And so more tools have come into play. You may hear the words Heggerty in terms of phonemic awareness. You may hear a program called Foundations that talks about phonics. You may hear things about geodes and certain decodable books in that way. So much work has been done. We're really thankful for our teachers for embracing that as well. Together we make a great team, certainly. So I think I just click. I do. So again, curriculum, now the instruction piece. The instruction piece talks about a little bit of the science units that we brought in last year. They were very materials heavy, and so a group of teachers got together to make them a little bit light, if you will, and focus on the engagement. We wanted and missed the hands-on component of science, and certainly the inquiry and the wonder, so this afforded us some more time and clarity to do that. We also talk about professional development in this area, and as I described for you the different curriculum pieces that were onboarded, we also think about how do we help support teachers to unpack those materials. And so summits, our elementary summit is a professional development encounter where our teachers meet 4 schools at a time, if you will, and so there's a great discussion. And practices for engagement and differentiation are available to the students, are available to the teachers so that they can then take that back to their classroom for the students. And the last piece there is several links, if you will. When you talk about schedules, you just heard about a block schedule, but very similarly, at the elementary level, we talk about that block and what does that look like, albeit a math block, albeit an elementary literacy block. And so here you see several schedules that talk about the different components within those blocks and the different materials that are available to teachers during that time. And our focus in our 3-5 this past year was based on word recognition and breaking down vocabulary to enhance comprehension. And lastly, that assessment piece of that framework, as we drew out in the first slide, talks about what assessment tools do we have and how do we use them to inform instruction. So eDoctrina is a tool that I'm sure you've heard about before. What we love about that are the analytics that are there. And so using those tools to help guide our instructional steps for each student allows us to differentiate and really take a look at how to be specific with our practices. We also have draft plans for assessment calendars, the discussion about what do we need in missing assessments. Now we did an assessment audit, and you'll hear tonight a little bit more about the possibility of looking at a universal screener and what that could afford us as a program. And then certainly updates are always in process as we learn more about our reporting out with parents, report cards and progress reports, and what does that look, and how does that help inform you, and how do we include that as our homeschool partnership. And so I think I'll pass that on.
So before, as we transition, are there any questions related to the elementary from what you heard from Mrs. Strangers? So that you don't have to wait to the end to try to remember what you thought in the beginning. So seeing none, we'll continue then with middle school for the instructional goals piece of it. Good, Bill.
Good evening, everybody. In practicing for my first slide, I was averaging in on about an average of 18 minutes. I will try to get that closer to 43 seconds, as per Dr. Robinson. My name is Bill Luke. I'm the assistant principal of Acadia Middle School. I'm going to try to share a very quick story with you. The details of the story are not going to be outlined for you on the slides behind me. But I think it's a really good anecdote to kind of highlight and showcase all the work that's happening within this goal area. And my story doesn't start as an assistant principal. It actually begins last Thursday evening as a parent of 2 middle school, Shenendehowa middle school students. As my 6th grader who came home on Thursday, just beaming with excitement about some work that she's been doing in her social studies class. So I kind of put my AP hat back on and poked around a little bit to find out what she's been working on. And I was really impressed with everything she was sharing with me. So I took it upon myself to go talk to those teachers to learn a little bit more about how they're setting this information up. And this is kind of what brings us back to these objective areas. So in terms of instructional delivery, there we go. I just kind of want to highlight some of the work that's been done through professional development with the implementation of the block. These lessons and speaking with the teachers are highly structured with multiple engagements. The teachers are stepping into the role of facilitator, and the students are leading their own learning. There's a wide and varied use of instructional technology. Students have extensive choice in how they're completing assignments. They get to work at their own pace. There's extension and enrichment activities provided along the way. And they're hitting a multiple intelligences throughout this project. They're completing logic puzzles. They're writing and singing songs if they choose to. They're creating masks. They're writing in hieroglyphics. They're building boats. They're collaborating with peers. This unit of study is called Ancient Egypt Museum. It's a 6th grade social studies. And basically what happens is every class of students come in and they're invited to explore a new room in a museum. And that room is based on a new content area within that unit, things like hieroglyphics, the afterlife, geography, things like that. There's multiple checkpoints and assessments throughout each lesson to measure our student learning. There's opportunities for redos where students can recover failure if they experience it. The intent of sharing this little story with you is not by any means to put any attention on my child or her teachers or even a particular school. I think this work is reflective of what's happening in so many of our classrooms throughout the middle school, and it really circles back to all of the work that's gone into the block. If I'm being honest with you, there's no way these teachers are able to implement this type of work in a 40-minute time frame. They really need the extended block to provide those experiences for deep student learning. So, thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Any questions before Bill steps down? Please do ask him a question. He's so ready for a question. I'm just joking. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So we have the high school. Again, we're still in that school and classroom experience, that goal 1. So we're going to go through each goal, each level, and then transition to the next goal area.
So we're going to gloss over the block. We covered a lot on that, but you'll notice something up there after the first couple blocks. I worked with the math department in Carey Beverly. Jackie works with Kat Guthrie, Dr. Guthrie in the special ed department. So we have a liaison. So part of the professional training is our building administrators and academic administrators. We collaborate together to plan lessons for the departments, and we did that a lot this summer and delivered those, some of the stuff Vanessa was talking about once we got into the school year.
Yes, Ron mentioned, at Dr. Robinson's Leadership Academy over the summer, every administrator was trained by Vanessa Kramer and John Bullington going through the resources that they had prepared for teachers. We then were able to kind of go through the whole process with them and really be on the ground working with our teachers, helping preparing them with those resources as we got into the opening day and superintendent's conference day, as well as we continued that as we progressed forward. Vanessa Kramer gave another wonderful presentation in October at our faculty meeting that was just filled with easy and accessible resources for teachers, giving them the confidence that they can incorporate all of these things into their schedules, into their classes, in order to make those meaningful experiences like the one that Bill was just referencing, even in the middle school. Another thing just to comment on quickly, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit more later, is certainly another big piece this year and every year has been a lot of the work of our SEL committee, our Social Emotional Learning Committee, and how we can use the block schedule to our benefit to also incorporate those experiences for students and how easy they are to push into a schedule and push into that time very quickly. So I'll touch on that a little bit more in one of our later slides.
So, and if we jump to the next, you'll see our Diploma Seals. I want to brag about one of our folks right there, Sarah Chaffee. One of our Diploma Seals by Literacy, Sealed by Literacy, that Sarah kind of taken the lead on. We're the #1 school in the state with awarding those Diploma Seals, and I found that out about an hour ago. So it was perfect timing, right? And we actually account for almost half the Diploma Seals in the capital regions. Not only are we #1 in the state, and it's a great opportunity for our students to earn this seal, to earn the Seal by Literacy, another endorsement on their diploma. And we do it because it's the right thing to do, and it's great for our kids. So kudos to Sarah for all that work. And Lisa Kissinger has us as one of the only schools in the state that are doing the Civic Readiness Seal. So that is also something new this year. If you continue to look up there, you'll see we had a lot of different COVID protocols, as you know, but one I really want to highlight is our SHED, so our Student Help Desk. They service our Chromebooks, 3,200 Chromebooks in connection with Ray Nardelli, and the work they do is really phenomenal. We took a lot of stuff we did last year out of necessity, refined it, made it better, and we're continuing that this year. So we have SHED managers. They're involved with the hiring process of new SHED students. So it's really a phenomenal program, something we continue to do. The last thing that I'll mention is our early release, late arrival. We started that in necessity last year. We've continued that this year for 9-12. We used to just do it for grade 12. It has worked out for grades 9 through 12. Kids are able to get into some other experiences. So that's something we've continued on this year.
And just to elaborate a little more, obviously there was some extensive planning over the summer and really throughout the entire school year related to the ever-changing COVID guidelines. We had to do some very creative things with our cafeteria and our lunch logistic plannings there. We even actually, when we had the block schedule at the beginning of the year, we started with having 4 lunches. After kind of seeing how that was working out and getting some feedback from the STA and students, that was actually shifted to 3 lunches because we were able to do that with the guidelines. So just really those opportunities, working with the IMS department to get Wi-Fi hotspots for students, looking at ways to transfer students to temporary virtual learning if they're quarantined to ensure that they continue to have access to their education despite the circumstances they may be under. So just a lot of ever-changing and progressing as we go through. Finally on there, one thing I will talk about is also the work with our school counselors and the way that they have been trained and worked diligently this year to be very effective in scheduling courses within the shift to the block schedule. The last thing on here that we'll talk about is certainly a continuation of some of our professional development on equitable grading practices. So not only have our academic administrators and administrators at the high school level worked solely with their departments, they also have worked kind of in conjunction with each other. So for example, our English and our science department have come together for some professional development on these grading practices and really making sure that we're providing all these opportunities to teachers who are then providing the opportunities to students within their own classes. Finally, one thing I'll talk about too is our weekly instructional support team. We run this at both High School East and High School West. It's a group of a variety of different stakeholders. It's administrators, counselors, student support counselors, school psychologists, school nurses, teachers, many others in the building. And we meet weekly to talk about specific students that have been referred to us that are in need of some sort of intervention, whether they're facing academic difficulties, social, emotional, attendance, anything that might be going on. We look for creative ways to find interventions for them. Sometimes our more traditional ones like a structured study hall, and then sometimes our less traditional ones that need to be more unique specifically for the student based on the needs that they're having at that time. So we can make sure that even though something else might be going on with them, we're still giving them every best effort to do well academically.
And you see HSIL on their high school instructional leadership, looking at enrollment data, because when you look at data, it depends on the lens you look at it through. Sometimes it looks great, sometimes not. So we're looking at our enrollment data in all of our courses through an equity lens. In terms of we're looking at our AP courses, our college level courses, and we have that lens kind of shed some light on data and helps us make decisions. So that's a project that we actually started a couple years ago and are returning to it because we got sidetracked with a couple COVID things. So we're really focusing on the enrollment data of our courses because again, the lens you put on when you look at it, it says different things. So it's really important for us to look at it with that equity lens in line with all of our district goals. That's something we're really looking at as we move forward with our high school instructional leadership team.
I have a quick question. For BOCES students, how does, is the BOCES program in sync with the block schedule?
So, no, so the BOCES program has not been in sync with the 9-period schedule or the block schedule. So they used to miss about 13 minutes every day of a class.
Oh.
Now they miss 25 minutes every other day. So
Okay.
that's problematic. We are actually put a meeting on the calendar the other day, myself, Kathleen Drago is one of our associate principals, one of our school counselors, and Lisa Kissinger. That's one of the few classes that don't have integrated credit down at BOCES, so students are taking social studies here. And we're looking to mod. Remember I said we have those 9 40 minutes throughout the day? If we can create a 40-minute U.S. history or 40-minute economics in those 2 slots, those students will miss 0 classes, something we were not able to do in the 9-period day. So that's an opportunity I think we're going to be able to move forward with. We're actually meeting probably in 2 weeks on that to really get those teachers involved and kind of do that. So yes, hopefully I have something different to report by September on that.
Fantastic, thank you.
Great, thank you, high school folks. So similarly as Sarah and Sarah come forward to talk the same goal area from the district-wide lens.
Good evening. So as you guys have heard, we have this thing called the Shen learning framework, right? And you keep hearing it come up over and over again because it really does guide, I think as Ms. Strandis referred to it before, it's a grounding document, right? It guides a lot of what we do, and it centers us on our why, the students, and also pushes us to think about the what, the how, and the how well. And so some of the bullet points you see here in terms of our major goals, our accomplishments, center around How do we know what our kids need, right? Refinement of our data dashboards. You've heard others talk about it. The need to really look at our data in different ways, paying attention to our subgroups, who's enrolled in what, where, and when, right? So really thinking about what that looks like. And then certainly paying attention to the social emotional learning needs of our students as they return to schools. We have implemented a second step program at the elementary level, as well as ensure that K through 12, we have collaborative planning efforts in place to support kids across the district. And lastly, you'll see here some collaboration between our food service and special education offices, really working to provide some deeper learning for students. They've collaborated to provide a work experience for community skills development program students. Moving on here, this is a heavy slide, lots of really good work to speak to here. This year, really so that we could ensure a positive and productive and worthwhile experience for all students, we really had to start here with the development of our comprehensive mitigation plan. And so that's the first thing you'll kind of see noted here. Moving on, then you can see how this plan really helped us to enable in-person learning for our students. We have 95% of our students who are here with us in person. Certainly there was an option, there is an option for those who who needed virtual learning. So as you'll see here, we've collaborated with BOCES to form a collaborative virtual learning academy for our K through 6 students. We also worked really diligently to ensure that as kids were having to come and go for quarantines or whatnot, that we were still providing instruction, that kids were still staying connected, and we put some systems in place for that very early on, also ensuring that we were keeping updated attendance during that time. Our special education department was also very busy developing some new components here. So you'll see the establishment of a specialized reading continuum, again, really working to address the needs of our students. Also the establishment of a special class connections collaborative. So a lot of really new and exciting pieces going on here. Lastly, just to touch upon, again, some exciting stuff. In unified, our unified PE, we've created 2 new sections at the high school. And as we look this spring to put in an application to become a unified champion school, this really works to build our program and gives our kids some awesome opportunities. With that, I will turn it over to Sarah.
Thanks, everybody. Good evening. So we've already talked a little bit about the data dashboard. You've heard Sarah mention that. But it's really important to note that having that data dashboard, and frankly having Sarah on the team now, has been a real addition to the team, and always having access to data. One of the things that's not on this slide is the ability for folks like us, academic administrators, to request data, right? To really give explicit information about what we need and what we're looking for, and Sarah and her team have been really helpful in making sure that we have the data that we need, because we want to make sure that we're looking at the qualitative and quantitative data, especially, as Sarah said, by subgroups, so we know what our kids need and then we can act on that. Many of the content areas have moved or are moving towards standards-based grading. You've heard that as well. That in and of itself is a significant shift for a lot of content areas, but it doesn't happen in a bubble. Other things have to happen for that to work as well, including updates to Infinite Campus, right, to make sure that what we're doing in terms of grading and inputting grades, that grades are weighted properly, right, and measured properly. So we're constantly reviewing that to ensure that things like grading weights are equitable. Thanks. And next I'm going to introduce Todd.
Good. As Todd comes forward to shift to the horticulture goal, any questions from Sarah? Great. So organizational culture is our second goal area, and again, we go to the progression by program level for this goal area as well.
So as we talk about promoting equity, diversity, inclusivity at the elementary school, this year we are all adopting across all 8 elementary schools the Student Voice Project. This was something that I think the inception was about 3 years ago, and it started at Shenendehowa, maybe one other school, and then kind of COVID shut it down. So we decided, student voice is so important. So we will be interviewing all of our 5th graders to get their take on how their school experience was, and then we can look at the strengths and the things that they wish happened, and we can adjust accordingly. And I believe we're going to present that and share that with everyone once we're done. The district-wide kindness week, which, at the elementary school is huge. So yesterday, I can probably speak for all the principals and all the teachers that we all received love notes and notes of appreciation from the students in the school, and it's a great week just once again to celebrate kindness. Today was actually also the 100th day of school, and I just want to share this little segment because Dr. Robinson loves the theme at Orenda. So I did get a little love note from a child that said, I have heard 100 times Mr. Giagni say it's always sunny and 80 at Orenda.
Nice.
So that's a proud moment for me. He's listening. That's always good. And the other thing is just
He's talking about me.
as we continue to denounce the future individualism, we focus on the EDI work that Natalie McGee brought to us through professional development that everyone in this room, I believe, has taken. And that is a foundational part of the conversations we have at the elementary level, whether it's district-wide or at the building level, to make sure we're including those opportunities to learn and grow as students in all the work we do.
Nope. Just point and click.
There we go.
Okay.
All right. So when we're talking about social emotional learning, which is the foundation, right, of all we do, we need to make sure that students feel safe in our buildings before they begin to learn. We did adopt Second Step. I know Joe Florio worked with Becky Carmen on determining, basically leading that initiative. And now currently this year, K through 2, we are implementing Second Step, and we're dabbling in it with 3 through 5. And regardless of what we're using, we know at the elementary level that those conversations are so important to, once again, make sure the students are feeling wanted, loved in the elementary school. As I said, that is the #1 thing, and you can't learn if you're afraid to come to school and or your needs aren't being met. A great thing that happened was through the federal funds, we've been able to increase the amount of providers or counselors we have through Saratoga Center of the Child. We usually had a wait list on this, where we would put students in to request that they receive these services due to financial difficulties or financial hardships. So this year we've been able to increase the amount of students that are getting these supports, and in turn that actually helps them in the classroom, which actually helps the school. So it's a great opportunity, and we're so lucky for that. And the other thing I just wanted to highlight on this was the anti-bias checklist that Kathleen was talking about. We used that when we adopted, when we reviewed the programs and piloted the math programs at the elementary level, and we used that as we adopted the Envision program for our main program. And obviously this fall, last year, we started, at the end of the year, we started to have some moving up ceremonies. People were driving through, and then this year, thankfully, we had some welcome back ceremonies at the elementary school, whether we had ice cream socials or some people have welcome back picnics. And that was great, and it was very rewarding because, once again, we need the parents and the families in our school in order to be successful. So that was a great opportunity. And then, once again, we learned, I think we can all attest to this, that our PTA meetings and our partnership meetings, we've been doing them virtually. And at the elementary level, and I'm sure at all levels, we've doubled the amount of people that attend these PTA meetings. People are at practice or cooking dinner. But the amount, if we can increase that, I think we're going to continue on with that, and we'll figure out other opportunities to increase the volume of attendees at those meetings as well.
Great. Any questions for Mr. Giagni? Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Tom Hopkins. That's my office over there in Gowanna. I can peek through and see you guys if I was in my office. So actually, I did a lot of the review for my presentation with Bill Luke in that office, and every time I looked at the slides to see what I should highlight, the same thing I kept thinking. There's nothing new that you wouldn't see any other year, for the most part, besides shifts to schedule and some of the things that were created because of that. And that's the success I want to highlight, is that we were able to plan an 18-month return of students in September, having to redesign foundational things and operations in this building to get to the things you're going to see on these bullet points. So there's not a real connection to what I'm saying in any particular slide. That was always our goal, to get to that normalcy, but that took a lot of people in the back of the room there, and a lot more people outside working together to re-envision the cafeteria. what does a classroom setup look like with COVID protocols? And then once we were able to set up the procedural and meeting protocol outlines, we then were able to get a little bit more creative. All right, well, if a desk is 18 inches deep, right, and they're facing each other, and we create a little dead space, well, can we have a group work in fours in a classroom instead of being in rows? And those are the things that we were able to do after setting up the foundational items. Right? And then how that trickled into kids is, with our new schedule, what was flex, and really having it be that amoeba to be responsive to what the need was as described by our schedulers. But then also extending that to what does a return look like for a kid after 18 months? It's a reintroduction to school, and it was a great time to really look at our restorative practices, how we remind kids, set the tone for what's expected, and use every opportunity as a learning moment. And so as a middle school, we reworked our student handbook, but also just really had a lot of conversation about what our approach to these kids were, starting in September, and then how that evolved over time. And so where we're at now, we see where the new schedule, the new ways of learning, technology is starting to really impact the classroom. And so when we talk about what engagement looks like, or how long a student can focus, well, when they're interested, when they're working independent, and it's high leverage learning and real world application, they can do it, right? And so kudos to everybody in the back room, a lot of people in the front room, and everybody outside to make that happen. And where the rubber hits the road for a student is in the things listed here. It's the Spirit Weeks, it's the PTA events, it's those moments that we all, when we think back to middle school, what was a part of it? March, hopefully there's our dodgeball tournament, and we're already planning for moving up. But those things couldn't happen if it wasn't the collaboration of everybody. And so the message is thanks, and the new normalcy is happening, and hopefully your kids, you're hearing the stories of that.
Thanks, Tom. Any comments? Good?
Good.
So one of our favorite parts of the year is when we meet with focus groups, and all the information you heard on schedule, the positives, they didn't come from me, they came from our students when we met in focus groups. So we hear their perspective, and more so on their experience. So they give us a lot of good input on their experience, what it's like to be a student. Not just what it's like to learn math, but really what it's like to be in the halls of Shenendehowa. So we ran focus groups, we get a lot of good information from students. We continue to do that, and that's something we should always do, is listen to our students, because it's stuff we just would not know. If you'll notice, you'll hear a common theme, our EDI committee. We have this very large committee, and then it's broken down into subgroups. I'm fortunate to be in a subgroup with Malik Jones and Erica Ryan. They kind of facilitate our subgroup, and then from there, that information is taken to our departments and our meetings when we meet with administrators, and from there it goes to our faculty. So the way we focus on equity, diversity, inclusivity, it's not just this large committee you might see when we meet monthly or however often we meet. The subcommittees are meeting. We're bringing that information to our departments. We're bringing it to our administrative teams, and from there it branches out. So it's really, the focus is so much more than when we get together. So that's something that's brought to all of our administrators and our teachers.
And another wonderful opportunity we just wanted to highlight was our Freshman Give Back Day, where approximately 90 students and 20 staff members really spent the afternoon just cleaning up around campus, beautifying, doing any work that they could to help our grounds crew out. And this is such a popular event for students. They release kind of the signups, and usually it reaches maximum capacity within an hour because kids are so interested in wanting to do this. So we've certainly had discussions of looking for more opportunities to have these types of events for the benefit of both students and staff, really, to be involved in that experience. As I mentioned, I was going to expand a little bit on the social emotional learning and the work of our committee. So the committee really started with kind of some administrators and counselors, and this year it was expanded to incorporate teachers. And the whole goal behind that was in creating resources for every teacher to be able to access in their classroom to incorporate social emotional learning. As Ron kind of mentioned previously, with equity and diversity and inclusivity, we don't want it to be a one and done type of situation. We want it to be something that is ingrained in the everyday experience of students. So that committee worked very tirelessly to create a website that's accessible on Inside Shen. They send out some monthly newsletters to faculty and staff, and they really just focus on making sure that everybody has access to resources that can be utilized every single day. Along with that, our student support counselors have done a lot of work on community circles, with students, and even some restorative circles. And as it's been mentioned, the 18-month pause for students, while they were still accessing their education, certainly there was some limitations in the social interactions they could have. So it's really important that now we look to give students the opportunities to engage in conversations with each other, really learn how to be respectful to each other, how to be considerate of each other, how to take in everybody's different points of view and value them along with their own point of view. So that's something that we've really been focusing on through our community circles and our restorative circles with specific groups of students to help them.
You'll see someone there mentioned resilience too. Just to touch on that, the resilience for our students with we mentioned equitable grading practices. Ms. Strand just talked about productive struggle. Our teachers have been teaching lessons on resilience in learning. We know our students are resilient because they've gone through this pandemic process, but the resilience in learning to follow through with their learning, to take advantage of the redos, the retakes, the opportunity to continue learning. If you see on there, ICS tabletop discussions, if you're not sure what that is, our incident command structure and our tabletops, when we have our administrative meetings, we often go through different types of scenarios that can happen in school and how we would react. So when Jackie and myself, our administrative team meeting, we'll talk about different scenarios that can happen and what we would do. Most recently, Jackie was in the library, I was in my office, someone else was somewhere else, and this incident took place. So what do we do to make sure our students are safe, our faculty is safe, and how do we get through processes if they were to come up? COVID protocols, we can talk about them all day long, but you'll see there's a number of things. This has been a kind of a common theme, how we've persevered through COVID protocols, how we excelled through COVID protocols. At high school, it was nice we did an in-person open house way back in, I don't know, September or October. And we heard from a lot of parents they were happy to walk the building because they had students in 11th grade, they've never been in high school east. And it's different when you're in high school because you're changing classes so much, you're walking long distances, so they kind of got a feel, and our parents are happy with that. And we try to send communications home. We try not to send too many where it's white noise, but we try to send just enough. And we've been pushing out a number of videos to our students, which is so much more important now than maybe even 2 years ago because they get to see us. They see our faces, so that's real important to send those out, and we continue to do that. And we've gotten our faculty involved and our students, so we're sending one out tomorrow about how students prepare for tests and how we act in the hallway and how that impacts the classroom, and that was made by students. And they're much better at making videos than we are, so that's a benefit to us too.
And just kind of some of the final bullets on there, not to read every one to you, but kind of just overall reaching the theme of finding a way to make sure that everybody is getting access, whether students or parents, to important information. So not letting any of the COVID protocols get in the way of us doing things like parent university nights, getting FAFSA information out to students and parents in need, PE nights, anything along those types of lines. So ultimately, really just our staff and everybody at the high school looking to always make sure that opportunities are there, despite any and all limitations we could be possibly facing, but making sure that doesn't get in the way.
Questions, comments? Good.
Good stuff.
So, Sarah and Sarah again.
Make a good team, don't we? Okay, so Ron mentioned the work of the EDI committee. We have been really, really busy this year. It's personally one of my favorite ways to spend a Wednesday afternoon. The subcommittees have been incredibly busy, and while we've been sort of mourning the postponement of Sensational, right, because of COVID, we have really taken advantage of the time to dig into the work of equity, diversity, and inclusivity. We've got book studies going on. We've got conversations going on around around New York State Ed's department, the New York State Education Department's culturally responsive sustaining framework, starting with, in particular, what are we doing well, what are we already doing, and then moving to what can we do better, where can we improve. And even just in terms of when the Policy Review Committee reviews policies, looking at language to make sure that the language of the district policies reflects inclusive language. So these are all changes that we make that sort of reflect that important shift, right, in our organization.
Yes.
Yep, sorry about that.
No, the next one. You're right, you're right.
So you've heard the theme, hopefully, of paying attention to what our kids need. and looking at our data by subgroup and really thinking through that. And so one of the things here is thinking forward to, look at our enrichment and our camp opportunities and thinking about who is present there and who is not, and how do we really make sure that that access is offered to all. And that's, sort of a theme throughout here as well. We have streamlined efforts for all of our SEL, our social emotional learning opportunities and tools and resources on inside Shen, so that access is easy. We've continued to highlight those initiatives through web and social media posts, and certainly thinking forward also around some legislative advocacy and what needs to be done there. We've seen free meals put in place, and that's something we want to really continue to look forward to. So some of that is spoken to here. And then moving forward, this slide speaks to community engagement, and certainly we're always looking for ways to continue to engage the community. COVID has created different opportunities in that way, and so certainly being able to stream events like this, you heard before PTA meetings and having increased attendance, and so looking to think about what we've learned from this and continue to incorporate those options moving forward. Another thing you'll see noted here is COVID supports. So of course that's been an area of focus for us. We've given out 10,000 plus testing kits. We will continue to do that. We've held 5 vaccination clinics, been able to assist in that way. And this is all in addition to testing available at schools and the extensive contact tracing that was done to ensure that our doors remain open and that our kids are here learning with us.
So we'll transition to personal and professionalism goal. So we have Mrs. Strange back.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So you'll see Sarah mentioned a theme. You might hear this equity, diversity, and inclusion theme in that way. And I hope you know that we have a commitment, an ongoing way to explore that in every fashion. And so this is a slide that mentions another subcommittee of that. But certainly, I hope you don't misinterpret the repetition here. What resonates with us as administrators is when we see this from level to level, we see the synchronicity of our efforts, and Dr. Robinson talks about that purposeful synchronicity. So I hope you can appreciate that as we get further along in this presentation. And also, there are a lot of book studies going on around these themes, a lot of webinars we're watching in that way. We find tools that launch the conversation, and the conversations are the most productive part. So we are committed to that. In terms of hiring and onboarding, we have some great protocols in place. We understand that the importance of a broad perspective at a table, and we have a lot of tools in place that help us check our own bias, and as well include all stakeholders. The second slide, in terms of the alignment of strategic imperatives with personnel, we had to be creative. You may have heard that word this evening also. We had to be creative with assigning staff, making sure that student learning is our main focus. And then certainly, though, we value the professional development opportunities afforded to our teachers, so we wanted to make sure that we were able to allocate staff appropriately for that purpose. And then I think it was Ron that mentioned too about our MTSS committee in that way. So we had to work this year to sort of audit the roles of various players in that, and then understand the structure and the umbrella that MTS forms for student support services. And then lastly, this slide speaks to the good use of Superintendent's Conference Day and how we allocated those beginning days for professional development, an in-depth dive, if you will. We also looked at the various ways. I think it was Todd that mentioned how important it was to offer the PTA in virtual format as well as on site. And so we found similarly, I think years ago we used to call it PD in pajamas, but now it's quite serious, right? With virtual opportunities are so important, and a choice is really what optimizes the professional learning experience. And so that's been very helpful for us. And as well as being responsive to our teachers. So when we talk about the onboarding of curriculum, we talk about the onboarding of resources, we need to survey our teachers to say, is in fact this meeting your needs? And what else have you discovered in terms of being a practitioner? And so being responsive and being able to further support implementation from a growth perspective is very important to us.
So as the middle school looks at goal number 3, which is personnel and professionalism, one of the overarching themes for us in the middle school is this idea of shifting. And I really want to, if you look at objective 1, one of the areas we're shifting in is making mindful decisions when we're hiring monitors. How can they better support our students rather than just providing supervision, taking attendance? What more can be done to meet the needs of our students with the big shift to mental health, social, emotional, finding and recruiting people who are understanding the importance of building good relationships with students so they can intervene in those unstructured areas like the cafeteria and the hallway. Objective 2, we were talking about some ideas about how to work more globally throughout the 3 middle schools, just to provide coverage when we're short-staffed. But the big objective I really want to focus on tonight for you is the building blocks of the block schedule. You've heard a lot about this tonight and the big shift to the block and all the professional development that's going in. I don't want to talk about what is entailed with that. That's for a different presentation. I want to really talk about why it's so important. And to do that, I want to remind you of everything our middle school teachers and our students have been through in the past few years. If you go back 2 years today, our students and teachers were teaching and learning in 9, 40-minute periods throughout a day. Then March 13th happened. And then beginning on March 16th, everything looked different. It wasn't really even about delivering instruction and measuring student learning as much as it was connecting with our kids. It was getting on Google Meets and simply just wanting to see one another. There were teachers just begging kids, bring your goldfish, bring your puppy, we're gonna do a scavenger hunt. That was the world of education in our middle schools 2 years ago. And then you move to last year, we're shifting from 40-minute periods to 64 minutes of instruction. We have AL, you have MZ, we're teaching in a hybrid model. And with the strict social distance protocols of 6 feet, you see a lot of what looks like stationary teaching. So you see a teacher physically here, teaching to the students on the screen, teaching to the students over there. It's a whole new way of providing instruction. And then this year, we're taking another step in the right direction. And we're at 3 feet, but we expanded from 64 to 80 minutes. So those are 3 significant shifts in as many years. So the why of we need high quality professional development. And on your own, if you want to dive into that building blocks for the block schedule, you really should. It's unbelievable what our instructional coaches are putting together, what our academic administrators are doing with the teachers in the classroom. And the students are the ones that are benefiting from it. And I gave you the example earlier this evening about students doing all these rich activities. So kudos to all those people who are working to provide that professional development for our teachers, because it's the students who really benefit from all of that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And high school, similar goal area, personnel professionalism.
Again, continue with the theme, our subcommittee, you'll notice on there, a couple things that we're doing, 4-stager psychological safety, both we're reading as a team, as a subcommittee from the EDI committee, and also we did diversity as a fact, inclusion as a choice, and these are more learning opportunities for us to then bring to our colleagues, to our students. Our hiring committees, I think Bill kind of articulated, like our support staff, they're with the students in the hallways. They have the opportunity to de-escalate situations. They're the folks that are often with our students the most. So we put a lot of time into the hiring of our support staff. And we kind of emulate the process we do for our instructional staff. We follow the same guidelines. We watch the videos on implicit bias. We have a lot of conversations, making sure we're getting the right people for our students. And onboarding of new staff, that is a constant. So we're always onboarding new staff. And we continue to have professional learning for our staff. We have support staff training coming up here in a month, and we'll be talking about de-escalation. We'll be talking about how to interact with students, how to take a situation that maybe is a challenge and turn it into an opportunity to build a connection with a student. So those are things that are continuing to happen.
And going along with that, just one other thing that's kind of a constant every single day is just making sure that we are utilizing our staff in the most effective way. Obviously, there have been staff shortages in terms of substitute teachers or teachers having to be remote due to quarantines or any DOH guidelines. And But one thing that's really been so positive to see at the high school is everybody is in it every single day. So if we need teachers to cover classes, they are right there. They are, if we make an announcement that we have some shortages, there are 15 teachers at that door willing to help out their colleagues because they know that their colleagues will be there to help them out if they're in a bind. Again, our support staff has jumped into situations and we've asked them to do things that may be out of kind of the realm of their normal job description, and they've always been there saying yes, doing anything we can along with everybody in the building. So it's so positive to see us respond to a challenge with something that's so productive.
And some of those challenges, we've come to realize we have a high school. We have two buildings, we have a high school, so we've actually been able to move staff back and forth depending on the needs. Sometimes there might be needs at High School West. We can get some staff over to High School West from East and vice versa. So something we had not really thought about. The last 18 months that Mr. Luke so articulately talked about kind of gave us that lens, and now we're continuing to do so. So we can utilize our staff at the high school, not just specifically one building or the other. And sometimes virtual works, so we're doing that with some of our hiring, especially for screening applicants. I know our academic administrators would screen applicants and maybe a handful. Now they could screen way more applicants to see who we're going to get to interview to put in front of our students, and they're able to do some of that virtually, so it makes it more efficient and a better candidate pool, a wider array of candidates we can see.
And then finally, for this last piece of this goal, just some more work by Sarah Chaffee and the Academic Administrator for World Language regarding some professional development on accommodating and modifying curriculum for English language learners. She's always a champion for every single student, so really always working to that and getting the rest of the team always behind those goals. And then, as Ron mentioned previously, some positive video series for students. So we certainly can make any and all videos as an administrative team, and teachers can, but there's such a power in students doing the opportunity and doing that. And Ron sent out a video, I think after one of our breaks, just with a positive message for students, and we had a couple teachers reach out to him and say, hey, can we possibly do this with our kids in class in some of our language of the media or English classes? Can we have them make videos to be able to be sent out? And so we're really looking forward to the products that they have created and the messages they're going to get out to kids.
Good, thank you both. Good. So the district-wide perspective on this personnel and professional, we have Sarah and Sarah again.
Okay, so just really Jackie already said what I was going to say, which was just to mention, but it impacts us district-wide, is just that in every area, we've experienced challenges, right, with a changing workforce, retirements, resignations, a limited pool of applicants. So a primary focus for all departments and working with human resources is to redefine responsibilities and job descriptions, and to realign roles and responsibilities, everything from rerouting buses and having mechanics drive buses, to the engagement of instructional and support staff and working with students to provide instructional support due to absences. It really has been all hands on deck.
I think you may have just.
Am I good?
Go on.
Perfect, okay, so, so we also have been, in the face of, the changes that we have to work with because of COVID, we have been able to support ongoing professional development, right, to support all kinds of learners. Some of it is virtual, some of it is in person. We've adjusted and offered professional development, especially for teachers of English language learners, which is most teachers in the district now, to include before, during, and after school. We're keeping Inside Shen up to date. A lot of the pages have been up to date, but in particular, we've been focusing on professional learning opportunities for instructional support staff. And so it has a place to live on Inside Shen.
Going to jump back 2 slides. The first one there. So from a district perspective, since July 1st, we have hired 184 people. Recruitment is ongoing, as you've heard, across the board tonight. We're continuing to look at different, innovative ways to recruit. Certainly the job market has shifted a little bit over the past 2 years, and so we need to really think about that. As you've heard, interviews over virtual meets, that's a new thing, right? And we need to kind of take advantage of those sorts of things. And then certainly as we bring people on board, we want to make sure that they are supported to success. So really thinking about paying attention to, and as you can see here, some development of specific onboarding programs or initiatives for our staff to make sure that they have everything that they need. The development of different pages on Inside Shen Human Resources to ensure effective communication and recognition of all of the guidelines and policies and whatnot, and support and tools that we have accessible to our staff.
Great, so we're going to our last goal here, fiscal responsibility. Mr. Giagni will come and speak on behalf of the elementary.
So with strategic budgeting, today actually we were, after our principals meeting, the elementary principals met with Dr. Wood and Dr. Robinson and a couple architects to have the beginning conversations regarding full day K implementation, which I know is trajectory is not until 22-23 the final decision would be made. But today we were given blueprints of our buildings, and we are currently going to go back and talk about the available spaces and looking for building capacity moving forward. If we can house all of the it would be basically 4 kindergarten classrooms in each elementary school. Another thing I'd like to highlight is just the increasing amount of staff that we will be able to have this summer for whether it's summer literacy or enrichment. Anytime we can have students in school, it assists with the regression, summer regression. So it's definitely a positive step in the right direction. As we move on to equitable resource allocation, I'd just like to highlight, you know, when I first got here 3 years ago, 5th grade had one-to-one Chromebooks, and then we had Chromebook cards for grades 3rd and 4th. And by the middle of last year, we were able to have one-to-one devices, Chromebook devices for all students 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. And currently, Ray and IMS has secured some federal grants, and we're about to share out one-to-one Chromebooks for our 2nd graders, which are touchscreen. We're not, you know, once again, some of the standards for keyboarding are a part of the New York State standards, so we will be implementing that, but once again, it allows for that implementation of one-to-one device using touchscreen, using Chromebooks or Google, and all the opportunities that it affords. Another thing we collaborated with IMS is the use of the Chromebooks during quarantine time. So we worked with Ray again in IMS, and we got a batch of chargers. So, and we kind of broke down the procedures for Chromebooks to go home, so there was a much more fluid process. And if kids were going to quarantine, we were able to just basically on the spot give them their Chromebook, give them their charger, and send them on their way so they could still be connected to the learning in the school. Hotspots were greatly appreciated by families that were experiencing a financial hardship. And I think the biggest thing this year at the well, probably district-wide, is the idea that we had the remote option through Capital Region BOCES, which in the beginning I think was a great hesitancy, just knowing that we want the children connected to our schools, but we are still able to connect them to our schools through our mailings and our SIS messages, but they are getting the remote learning that they need due to health concerns in the family.
Any questions from Todd related to elementary? Great, thanks, Todd.
All right, I just had the final one.
Oops. Any questions from Todd related to elementary?
I can see. So I'll just highlight here, once again, the entire elementary principal leadership group resides on numerous committees right now, either in partnerships, and we're having some fun, I would say, with the extra funds from the federal government, and so we're creating those initiatives. And the other thing I just like to highlight is the universal screener. We've been working through MTSS with numerous stakeholders throughout the district to kind of hone in on a universal screener, and I think we're getting to the final stages for that decision to be made.
Great, thanks, Todd. Appreciate it.
Hi again. Knowing that everybody pays a little bit more attention when you talk about how you spend their money, I'll leave it to your imagination whether I won or lost the rock, paper, scissors match versus Bill Luke on 1/14 at 2:35 p.m. But quickly, just 3 different chunks that we want to focus on is between the long-term and ongoing look at how we're using our money in long-term planning for our fiscal responsibility. So I'm not going to go over the details of the capital improvement project with our building, because I know you guys go over that in detail with Dr. Robinson. So there's maybe some of the things you don't see in our long-term planning is the administration of the middle school just completed a tri-building camera map. So to identify really where our need area is for some of our dead spots, but also, you know, knowing that our kids travel, being able to just safely monitor the students through our camera system. And thanks to Barb Salaker, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be meeting, walking the building, and identifying those need areas. But then we go, you know, to the ongoing assessment. So, and the implications of what the changes of the schedule did to our building and our space and personnel need. So when we're talking about there being a flex created at the lunchtime, well, that's space use and people use. And so when we're talking about the planning of this over summer, Mrs. Bush, Dr. Wood said, hey, show us the need and we'll support. And so we really had to re-envision, reimagine how we use people, and we're talking about sliding 10 minutes here creates a whole nother person here. And those little minutia of detail that will allow us to be a little more responsive to the limitations of our funds. So really maximizing the use of people and being evaluative in that. Being communicative with teachers, if we're using their space, we have to give them other spaces to work because they always are pulling kids to work. So even just how we do our practices with room utilization, sharing that with teachers. And then maybe the most immediate need that was done in September is how do we make sure that we're providing an equitable education for all people. So that was the one-to-one Chromebooks, that was working with high school to get the Chromebooks down to our sixth graders, sorry. Good here. That our sixth grade Chromebooks weren't coming in as of September, so we repurposed some of those high school Chromebooks to get them in the immediate need. And then ongoing, how do we maintain that? So all these areas that are getting created because of some of the new opportunities we have through technology. And then just being reflective, always taking the pulse of the staff, and you see that in the block presentation that Dr. Wood, Mr. Nat, and Mrs. Gories presented, is we're trying to understand what we can do better next year. We're coming back from 18 months off with a new schedule, with new needs, and so just always being reflective and understanding how we do what we do and how we do it better is a part of our ongoing process.
Good. Let's go one more, two slides. Thank you. So high school.
So last but not least, on the fiscal responsibility aspect of the presentation, not to be redundant, I feel like we've said it a couple of times, so I don't want to belabor on it, but just some videos that we've prepared for students about the lunches, the mask wearing, our daily practices as they prepare for this year, along with something else I really and would like to highlight is the work of Jean Lorch in our science department on submitting 2 major grants for the high school with the hopes of building a community garden on campus, as well as the further vision of a kind of implementation of a farm to school type of program. So certainly some great work happening there and some wonderful utilization of some available funds that we might be able to access to be able to make more opportunities for our students. Going along with that, some of the work of our entire administrative team, but specifically Lucas LeBaire, one of the associate principals at the high school, in organizing the utilization of the PSAT exam for all students. So the elimination of any financial barriers for a student being able to take that exam and offering that exam during the school day for every student to be able to have access to, not having them have to have a ride to come in on a Saturday or anything along those types of lines. And compliments to Lucas, who does a tremendous amount of work in organizing the teacher schedule and the monitor schedule and everything for that day to benefit our students. And finally, something I did touch upon a little bit previously, and also some work of Lucas as he supervises the monitors along with everybody else, is just kind of the constant changing and shifting of how we are using that staff on a daily basis based on whatever needs have arisen.
And I know we've talked about space a few times. It's funny when you look at something differently, you see space differently, whether it's on the weekend you're in the building, a different block space looks different. So quick example, we have Chromebooks one-to-one. We've had them for a couple of years now. We have computer labs, we have less. Working with Ray Nardelli, we're finding a computer lab, it's like 1,000 square feet, bigger than a regular classroom. It's rarely used. So working with Ray saying, well, what if we repurpose these computers to the art area, because they could use another lab, a smaller space that we can get the computers in, because we know the future of art, we're going to be adding animation. We want to add some things in the art program that will involve computer use. At the same time, we now have the space to schedule, working with Barb Saliker, working with the fire inspector to make sure if we put a door here, we can do that kind of stuff. So that's currently taking place. So we have space, we just have to look differently, and those are some of the things that are happening. And then at High School West, same idea. Working with Ray again, we have a computer lab attached to the library, but the students are looking for space to kind of work, to collaborate, to get on whiteboards. They're not using the computers. So we're looking to reimagine that space, that computer lab. We're not getting rid of all of them because we want to be sure. We want to kind of take a little incremental step there. So we're looking to take about half of them away, create some soft seating, put some whiteboards in, because that's what the students are using. And then if we want to continue the following year, maybe we'll look to get rid of more. But those are some kind of things, just reimagining the space we have, because sometimes you have it, if you look at it a little differently.
And last group, and we'll wrap up this goals presentation.
So this slide here speaks to, there's a lot of acronyms, right? And it speaks to all of the grants that we are excited to be in planning phases for and looking forward to implementing. Really about, this is about accessing and implementing federal grants. And as you can see here, there are many of them with varying content area or focus points, right? So we have a notation of a pre-K grant here. We've been able to get a bunch of kids, I think around 40 kids currently we have in seats at New Meadow and Little Genius because of this funding. And then you've heard about some of the things upcoming in terms of being responsive to where our students are and looking forward to those exciting opportunities, and certainly much of that comes from what's here. And to ensure also that we are truly leveraging all of our budget resources. You see on the bottom here, we've updated our processes used to review our instructional material requests, really ensuring again that we are always thinking about what we're getting, when we're getting it, why we're getting it, and also, I guess it's noted on a few other slides, you'll see, we'll talk about some how we're doing that. So I'll pass it over to Sarah and then we'll get back to that.
Okay, it only took me all night to figure out how to use the mouse, so we're bringing it home now, Sarah and I. So we're still tasked, right, with keeping buildings open for business and safe. So of course you're familiar with capital projects that address things such as air conditioning in elementary buildings, roof repairs, asbestos abatement. We are also always looking for ways to improve efficiency of our workflow. And so a number of us as administrators, and administrators, school administrators are notorious for having thousands of emails in their inbox. Emails are not just messages, right? They're actual tasks that have to be done. So several of us were looking for a way to sort of manage the flow of our email. And just today, a group of us finished up the third of a three-part training in how to improve efficiency, increase response time, and find balance in our email, and that's what's reflected here as the stacked email method.
All right, so this slide, our last one, really speaks to, like I said, kind of the what we're doing to ensure that we are getting, the biggest bang for our buck, for lack of a better phrase. So really taking a look at utilization of a bid process to competitively secure materials, thinking about RFP process, or request for proposals, again, ensuring that we are competitive out there with what we're looking for. We've also developed structures to think about our out-of-district needs and what that involves from a financial perspective. Working to buy items in bulk. Who would have thought you're buying, pallets of food, right? But things like that, all of those areas are being looked at and reviewed. As well as you can see here, current and potential translation and interpretation services, all thinking through that.
Thank you, ladies. So I'll transition for Mrs. Stevenson real quick. So just to turn out of this, any questions, comments from board members as we transition from the presentation mode? Mr. Preston, go ahead.
Quite a few slides mentioned universal screener. Is that an SEL thing? Is it an MTSS thing, or is it a
No, it's not
combination?
necessarily SEL, it's trying to identify more academic gaps than not with students, and then how making sure that what we provide to those kids are, so when you talk about, and it goes from our academic intervention services and putting all those things under one umbrella, which ironically, when you think about some of the social emotional learning issues that kids have, is in fact coming from academic struggle. So how do we, and at some point we will be coming back to the board to discuss that, could be late spring or early fall, just to give you a closer detail on some of the work that we're doing with that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm going to just transition, since Ms. Stevens is not looking at me, I don't want her to not look at me while I'm talking. So just one quick comment, and something I shared with our admin group today, and I've been talking very closely with our district leadership as a part of our evaluation process, just to kind of put this whole thing in perspective, that while our administrators and our leaders and our teachers, while we've been in very much a management of crisis or circumstance mode, people are still leaving for opportunities. You saw that over and over. Yes, you saw all the circumstances that people had to manage, but I hope that you saw the theme that even in that, people are still leaving for opportunities that will be impactful on our organization. So if you walk away with nothing else, I think you should walk away from a board with a high degree of confidence that the folks who spoke tonight and those who they represent, people are committed to lead and lead in a very effective way. So for me as superintendent, listening and hearing those things and knowing a lot of nuance and details, those type things, it's like music to the ear. And I hope that you as a board realize that that's the same thing. So when the board adopts goals in August, you know, the question is what happened? Well, you see, in fact, you see in presentations all the time, but I think certainly from a community perspective, that people realize that the commitment to provide students options and opportunities did not waver over the last 18 months and certainly over the last 6 months of this school year. And we have a lot of optimism in terms of what the remainder of the school year is going to bring and how to springboard us into the 22-23 school year. So with that being said, I know tonight was a lot of information shared with the board. I thank you always for this opportunity to sit and take it all in, but I really do hope that you walk out of here with okay, yeah, you know what, we're doing some good stuff. And having that feeling, that warm feeling that we're actually doing some good things. And it's because of you as a board leadership. I'm not saying this as a appeasement comment. I talked to a lot of colleagues that their schools have pretty much went on pause for 18 months. It's to the contrary here. We are focused on trying to move ahead and doing things differently. So, and it's because we have a board that has been very supportive of us moving ahead. So I don't take that for granted at all. When I say that the partnership, Mrs. Stevenson and I, we talk about all the time, partners in progress. When we have these conversations about those dicey things that sometimes people make a real big issue out of, we have to put it back in perspective. How does this play out on behalf of the 9,400 plus kids that we serve? And at the end of the day, that's what matters most. So again, I want to thank you for that, Deanna. Thank you very much for your indulgence. Know that you're home and you could have said, I'm going to blow it off, but you saw it was important enough to even come to us virtually. So thank you very much as well. So I'll turn it over to you, Deanna, and I'll shift the cameras. You go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Does anybody have any further comments? I would just like to thank everybody. I know it's a long day for our administrators too, right? Because they were there all day. And then to do all this at night. And a lot of information, a lot of great detail, a lot of great things happening. So sincere thank you out there. I'm sorry I can't be there with you. Okay, moving on into just a few more things. It's for the good of the order now. So I had two comments to make. First of all, I did hear that we were talking about, Mr. Diaghi was talking about a full-day kindergarten and how they were giving blueprints of each school to start to think outside the box a little bit. District leadership and Gusta and myself continue to meet and discuss different buying options in Clifton Park and Half Moon, focusing in Half Moon. Just please FYI on that. We had a meeting this past week as well. And then the other piece I just want to continue to share is that hearing a lot from the community members about, you know, what our coming weeks will look like. And quite frankly, you know, we have people that are really want to hear more. We're going to continue to mask. And there's community members that feel, you know, we're done with masking. So listening to all sides, I think this is an opportunity for the community to come together. I often will ask for feedback. I often will give you my phone number. I often will email you. So please, take that opportunity and share your ideas. That's what we're up out here in this community. And it certainly isn't a time to be further divided. This is the time to come together. So I hope everybody indulges me on that and takes me up on my offer. That's all I have for tonight. How about my fellow board colleagues?
I see none, so I think we're good.
Yes, I think we're good.
Do I have a motion to adjourn? Justice first, Bob is second. All in favor? Motion carries and meeting is adjourned. See you all tonight.